Hey there everybody, it's Jaybread the Third with another how-to video. Today we're going to be going over how to off-tank Bahsei hard mode. First thing, we're going to go over skills and CP. Skills for a DK in particular. I'm main tanking the rest of the trial in my cores. You can do it on a Necro as well, and I'll go over those skills after doing the DK here. So, to start with CP, which I think will be universal for tanks. In the blue tree, we have Enduring Resolve for damage over time effects, which will help with the bleeds and burning from the minis. Duelist rebuff, single target attacks. The light attacks take quite a bit. I've got Ironclad, direct damage, again also light attacks, and other kind of direct hits. And then finally Focused Mending, which is really powerful when you have the bleed or the burning from the atros and the Behemoths. And this is single target heals. So you essentially buff your own self-healing by 10%. In the red CP, there's a little bit of flexibility here, so I'll just go over what I like to do. Balanced Vitality for max health, added armor, rejuvenation for just general recovery. That one can swap out for stuff. I like to use it. Again, up to you. And then the fourth one, I like to use Strategic Reserve. It gives 30 health recovery for every 10 ultimate you have. And you're not going to be, popping out ults over and over, but let's just say you have 200 ult. You're going to have 600 health recovery, and that's going to be really helpful when you have a bleed or burning. Another good option is Sustained by Suffering. So it increases, when you have this all the way up to 50, it would increase your health, mag, and stam recovery by 150 when you're under a negative effect like bleeding or burning. Again, usually it's just going to be health recovery. So Strategic Reserve, I've been lately choosing to go with that. Next, we're going to go over the skills that I use as a DK, as the off tank. So, of course, Green Dragon Blood, and I'll give logic to some of these later if they're kind of related to when you cast them and how you cast them and if they're attached to any particular sets. So just hang tight with me for a little bit. But yes, to start, Green Dragon Blood, Pierce Armor, of course, for a taunt, which this does become a heal if Master Sword board. Chains to help with little archers when you can. Shield, this gives yourself a shield, and then my Major Mending whenever you cast it on yourself. I use Revealing Flare as well on the front bar because you gain major protection when you have it slotted. So you basically have a damage reduction overall of 10%, which is really helpful with the bleeds and the burning. And then I do Magma on the front bar, especially on a DK. Sometimes if you get in a really hairy spot with double bleeding, double burning, or even just the group spread out and you're trying to save the run or whatever, pop a Magma. That's really helpful. Now on the back bar, Igneous Weapon, so people can use ulti-pots if they so desire to, because they gain major brutality and sorcery. Wall, of course, because you're going to apply Crusher onto your target. I use Resolving Vigor, so this is the selfish morph of this. So this is a really powerful self-heal, and again, remember this is going to get boosted 10% by the blue CP Focus Mending that you have on. This is a really powerful self-heal. Long range taunt, of course, and then rapids to move around the arena quickly, and you'll see me grabbing some of the synergies for up top, and I cast this when running over to it, just get over quickly, and it helps the group move a little faster sometimes. I rarely cast this, but this is kind of a flex spot. And then of course Horn. So that covers the skills on DK off tank. And then really for any other class, it's going to be a similar principle of you want some kind of damage mitigation, some kind of chain to be able to pull in little archers, a powerful self-heal, and really probably the best second option, or even perhaps better than a DK, is a Necro, and that's for a couple reasons. And the first reason is for one of the passives, Disdain Harm. What that does is it reduces the damage you take from damage over time abilities by 15% while you have a Bone Tyrant ability active. And you're usually going to be pairing a Bone Tyrant ability anyway, Beckoning Armor or the other morph, it doesn't matter. You have that active, you have 15% damage reduction of the bleeds and the burning, which are hit really powerfully on the off tank. And the second reason is similar damage reduction is the Spirit Guardian, that it transfers 10% of damage taken to the ghost. So overall, when you have the bleed or the burning on a Necro, you have 25% damage reduction. And then on top of that, you can stack the major protection that you gain from having Revealing Flare on the front bar, and then also Temporal Guard. You can put that on the front bar to gain minor protection on any class. It's good to have Magma on a DK, but on other classes, you can gain minor protection, so it's another 5%. So overall, when you have Bleed and Burning on a Necro, you can have 40% damage reduction. It's pretty insane. All right, the next thing we're going to go over is gear setups. Now, the gear setup is going to be determined by your raid lead. This is just what I'm using, but I do recommend a couple things that would probably be the same across classes. One is using Sax Heal. You can body this or put it on your sword and board and back bar. The reason why I body it is I'll explain in a minute. But whatever ultimate you cast, you give Major Force, which is what you gain from Horn, to your party. So this is really nice on a Necro. They cast Colossus, applying Major Vulnerability and giving Major Force. If you cast Magma, and when you're in a tight pinch, you still give Force to people in your party. So excellent set. You get this from Rockgrove as well. Then I'm using Powerful Assault. This gets a little bit sweatier. You can use something else here, Worm, really whatever your party lead wants. I'm using Encratis because it applies 5% damage to flame, or debuff to flame damage on the targets that are in it. The main tank can wear this. So there's some options. Again, raid lead discretion. The thing I would recommend, though, is to have the Master Perfected Shield sword and board, is because A, it gives you 3% healing taken, which is really helpful when you have bleed or burning, and then it allows puncture to also be a self-heal for you. I think this is really powerful to have because if you're running low on mag on any class, you can use your stam to basically give yourself a really nice heal. And again, with focused mending, this will boost up the heal you gain from this with puncture. Don't have to use this, but I think it's a really safe bet to be using as an OT. Okay, that was quite a bit. So now we're going to move into what's it look like in action, and why and how I do what I do, and when I cast certain skills, etc. So hopefully all your questions will be answered. In that, I'll slow down the video some. We'll take it step by step. There isn't much for the off tank to do at the start of this fight. You apply debuffs to the boss, buffs to the group. You can chain in archers that spawn. There are going to be 3. Every time Bahsei kind of pushes her arms out to the side, there are 3 archers that spawn, or later in the fight, 3 ghosts. But here at the start, there are 3. You can chain them in to get cleaved into the group. There are a total of 7 flesh abominations, all spawning within 5% Bahsei health intervals, starting at 90% health and going until 60%. Bahsei always looks in the direction of the one that she's spawning next, so that's a good tip on where to look to find it. They are very slow to be fully spawned, but once they spawn, they fairly quickly do a massive AoE slam that will not disappear. It is general wisdom to let them slam along the edges of the room, so A, the group can still move around the room safely, and B, there's an exploding meteor mechanic later in the fight that will not land on top of one of the AoEs left by the flesh atro. I'll explain that later. Next, with the strat that I prefer, you pull the boss and the atro to the corner the middle cone is moving away from and will take the longest to get back to. You'll notice that it slams pretty quickly, and then it's a rinse and repeat for this strategy in terms of pulling the atros, letting them slam. And you have the main tank moving the boss slightly in front with the atros trailing behind. To place the slams a little better, make sure you get as close to the edge as you can so some of the massive AoE won't even be on the platform. When the atro is actually slamming, you can stand in it, blocking, as it doesn't do too much damage initially, but I typically just roll dodge or move out. Okay, now the dreaded atro bleeding that demolishes tanks with massive unblockable damage ticks. It should be noted that you cannot roll dodge the hit from the atro that applies the bleeding. It is RNG when they use the arm that applies the bleeding. and when you would get that. So you may not get it, you're likely going to get it, but it is RNG and you cannot roll dodge it, unfortunately. In general, there's a fairly consistent pattern. First, you start by casting Vigor, then other healing or healing boosting abilities, and for a DK, that would be Igneous Shield, since it gives me precious seconds of major mending. And then finally, you spam your class heal or puncture when you have the Master Sword and Board equipped, since that also becomes a heal. Continue blocking as their normal light attacks also do significant damage. All in all, it's about a 5 GCD rotation of self-healing. It is also wise to assign healers to different tanks, so one healer is focusing you when you have bleeding, so you have to make sure to call it out. And especially when or if you get 2 bleeding stacks at the same time from 2 different atros. But ideally, your group is focusing the fletch atros as they come into group and only cleave the boss. You want to be careful as a group to not push Bahsei to a flesh atro spawn point right before or during the cone. It is wise for the main tank to pull Bahsei a little out of cleave so she doesn't get pushed. In general, during cone phase, you are chaining in archers and sticking near the boss so as to not get curses. If you don't have a flesh atro up on portal beams, you can get the upstairs portal beam when it is to the side of group or behind the main tank. Otherwise, it's not too hard for a healer to get it when it's behind the group. If you do have an atro spawn right before or during the cone, there are different ways of handling this, but the general principle will be to not panic, taunt it, and bring it to an edge of the platform that won't get hit by the cone anytime soon. Let it slam and let the group finish it off either where it is or as you're moving. Finally, the last 2 comments about flesh atros is A, if by some ungodly luck you have 2 flesh atros spawning almost back to back, let the first one slam, move towards the second, and taunt it. Remember, they take a long time to spawn, and the slams are incredibly important to place properly. And then finally, the last thing to really watch out for is the main tank exploding from curse. Sometimes it will be coming right at you, and you can simply roll dodge through them if you're in a pinch, or just move out of the way. And a huge congratulations, you finished the fight. What was that? You're halfway done? Ah, okay. Alright, we still have half a fight left. Next, we deal with the Behemoths. There are a total of 5 that spawn, but at different intervals, not like the 5% intervals for every health of the Flesh Atros. They spawn at 50%, 40%, 25, 20, and 10%. You want to try and stack them on or near the boss and have your group focus them. Once your group is more comfortable, they'll know which ones they can cleave and which they need to burn more quickly. And similar to the atros, they apply a nasty dot that is unblockable. It's burning. You deal with this in a similar fashion as the bleeding. Vigor, a heal over time or heal boost from your class kit, single target heal spamming 2 to 3 times, whether it's a class heal or puncture with Master Sword and Board. The only nuance to this I've found that makes it easier is to make sure you are standing in the AoE heals the group is receiving and only ever swap bars immediately after a light attack from the Behemoth. Their burning and light attacks hit harder than the flesh atros, so you have to be extra cautious. If they hit you with a light attack when you are mid-bar swap, it is likely you'll die if you take that plus 1 tick of burning at the same time. Spooky, I know. Although it's not necessarily a tank mechanic, meteors start dropping at 30% health, and the group has 10 seconds to kill it once it lands, before it wipes the group with a massive explosion. Remember, the meteor will not land where you placed the atro AoEs from earlier. The idea is to try and mitigate them spawning in the absolute worst places that are furthest from the group when you're dealing with the behemoths at the Oblivion portal. Probably the most dangerous point for an OT during behemoths is the 25 and 20% spawns, since they spawn so close together. You can play this safer by holding the 25% spawn further from boss and killing it, or if the group can kill it quickly by focusing it while it's stacked on Bahsei, that's okay as well. Either way, double scalding is super nasty, and I wouldn't wish it on anyone. If you happen to have a behemoth during the cone, you don't have to worry about a slam like you do with the atros, but you do have to worry about when they die and they do the massive explosion that causes knockback. Everyone can easily roll dodge that, however, so make sure to stay close to the boss and yell at DDs to kill the behemoth. Some final thoughts about off-tanking Bahsei hard mode. This boss is incredibly challenging on all the supports, so be patient with yourself and others as they're all adjusting. I've left out so many mechanics in this fight because there really are so many tips and tricks for each role. I've tried to include the fundamentals for the off-tank role and what I found useful in being successful. Feel free to ask questions below or follow me on Twitch. Happy raiding.